Good morning to good morning to one and all. This is DLN Sai Jishnu from CSC Data Science B section. Today I'm going to discuss about concept video of English. Topic is be an active learner. First of all, we are going to discuss about barriers to effective listening. Humans are creatures of a habit and habits you have created over time to determine your success. Old habits are difficult to break, but through habits formation, you can build a new behaviors. Despite the difficulty encountered while trying to form them, the factors which acts as impediments to effective listening and are considered as barriers to effective listening can be classified into the following. Trying to listen to more than one conversation at a time, you find the communicator attractive or unattractive. If you are not interested, not focusing, feeling unwell or tired, identifying rather than empathizing, you're prejudiced or biased, you have been preconceived ideas or bias, you make judgments, previous experiences, self-observation, having closed mind, sympathizing rather than empathizing. Cognitive and personal barriers to listening. Aside from the barriers to effective listening that may be present in the environment or emanate from our bodies, cognitive limits, a lack of listening preparation, difficult or disorganized messages, and prejudices can interfere with the listening, whether call it multitasking, daydreaming, glazing over, or drifting off. We are cognitively evolved of 10 televisions. You may notice that in some situations, 5 of the 10 televisions are tuned into one channel. That if that one channel is a lecture being given by your professor, then you are exerting about half of an cognitive processing abilities of one message in another situation. All 10 televisions may be on different channels. The fact that we have the capability to process more than one thing at a time offers some advantages and disadvantages, but unless we can better understand how our cognitive capabilities and personalized preferences affect our living, we are likely to experience more barriers than benefits. Bad messages and or speakers. Bad messages and or speakers also present a barrier to effective listening. Sometimes our trouble listening originates in the sender in terms of message construction, poorly structured messages or messages that are too vague, too jargon-filled, or too simply present listening difficulties in terms of speakers delivery, verbal fillers, monotone voices, distracting movements, or disheveled appearances can inhibit our ability to cognitive processing of message. As we will learn in speakers can employ particular strategies to create listenable messages to take some of the burden of the listener by tailoring a message to be heard and processed easily. Also discuss many strategies for creating messages tailored for oral delivery. including things like preview and review statements, transitions, and parallel wordings. Listenings also become difficult when speakers try to present too much information. Information overload is a common barrier to effective listening that good speakers can help mitigate by building redundancy in their speeches and providing concrete examples of new information to help audience members interpret and understand the key ideas. Differences between a speech and thought rate. Our ability to process more information than that what becomes for one speaker or source create a barrier to effective listening while people are speak at a rate of 125 to 175 words per minute. We can process between 400 to 800 words per minute. This gap between speech rate and thought rate gives us an opportunity to side process any number of thoughts that can be distracting from a more important message. Because of this gap, it is impossible to give one message or undivided attention, but we can occupy other channels in our minds with thoughts related to a central message. For example, using some of your extra cognitive processing abilities to repeat, rephrase, and reorganize messages coming from one source allows you to use that extra capacity in a way that reinforces the primary message. Bad listening practices. The previously discussed barriers to effective listening may be difficult to overcome because they are at least partial beyond our control. Physical barriers, cognitive limitations, or perceptual bias exist within all of us. And it is more realistic to believe that we can become more conscious of a lesson than it is believed that we can eliminate them altogether. Other bad listening practices may be habitual, but they are easier to address with some concerted efforts. These bad listening practices include interpreting, distorted listening, eavesdropping, aggressive listening, and pseudo-listening. Interrupting is resortedly eavesdropping, aggressive listening, narcissistic listening, pseudo-listening. Other common barriers to listening. Physical barriers, noise, poor acoustics, malfunctioning of the mechanical devices being used, frequent interruptions, uncomfortable seating arrangements, or physical barriers that are hamper effective listening. The first step of listening process is hearing and extraneous noise disturbs that hearing process. Extraneous noise disturbs both the listener and the speaker. In case a device like a microphone or a telephone is being used, then the malfunctioning of the device will act as a hurdle, or it may result in the failure of transmission of the message from speaker to the listener through poor acoustics of the room or uncomfortable seating arrangements make it difficult for the listener to um, concentrate on the speaker. Extraneous noises disturbs both the listener and the speaker. In case a device like a microphone or a telephone is interruptions by other people or by the telephone while someone is speaking disturb the concentration of the listener, frustrate the speaker, and make the listening process less effective. Message overloaded, which involves listening to a lot of information one after another, also make it impossible to listen attentively after a certain point. This we can summarize the physical barriers to include noise, poor acoustics, defective mechanical devices, frequently interruptions, uncomfortable seating arrangements, and environment message overload. People related to barriers, psychological barriers, both are speaker and influence the communication process. People related barriers can be both psychological and physiological state of health. The physical condition of the individual affects the listening ability, fever, pain, or any other form of Bodily discomfort makes it difficult for an individual to listen attentively. Similarly, poor health conditions of a speaker reduce his ability to speak well, and this in turn reduces the listening effectivity of the listener. Disability. Hearing is the first step of the listening process, and therefore, hearing deficiencies may lead to poor listening. Similarly, speech disorders of the speakers may make speech incoherent to the listener at the time speaker assent through not a disability make it difficult for the listener to comprehend. Similarly, when a speaker speaks very rapidly, it may also result in unclear message reaching the listener. Wandering attentions, psychological barriers. Psychological barriers can relate to attitudinal and behavioral aspects. These include the following: being assured of the speaker and abilities based on the past experience or inputs from the sources. The listener may have a preconceived notion of the speaker's ability. He may perceive the speaker to not be well informed or that be lacking in depth and ability. This acts as a barrier to the listening process, as the listener will not listen to what the speaker has to say. Personal anxiety. Sometimes we are preoccupied with personal concerns and anxieties. This makes it difficult to perceive what is being said, thus acts as a barrier to effective listening. Attitude. This is also a barrier for impatience. This listener may not have the patience to wait for the other person to finish what he has to say. He may intolerate, may eager to add his own points to the discussion. As a result, his desire to speak overcomes his desire to listen. Thus acts as a acting barrier. These are the hope you liked my PPT. Thank you.